A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review. So cheers. Now today I'm looking at a science fiction novella, I guess you would say, which I actually have never read before, although I have seen the movie that was based off of this book long ago, back when I was a kid. It starred Dennis Quaid, and I thought, as a kid, for a science fiction film, it was actually a little bit boring. However, I really need to go back and watch it after reading the book that it was based on, and that is Barry B. Longyear's Enemy Mine. You can see we have the Asimov kind of cover here for the collection that it was initially released in. We have the original art on the back there by Vincent DeFate. And we have a picture of the author after finishing this novella. Now, Enemy Mine is an absolutely fascinating read. This is classic sci-fi in that it's not high action, it's not high adventure. It is basically using science fiction in order to highlight the problems, the hypocrisies of humanity. And I literally could not put this thing down. I finished it in less than a day. The basic story is a human and an alien. The alien is from a species known as the Drax. Are stranded on a planet together, and they have to learn to communicate and to help each other in order to survive. That's the basic kind of overarching plot. But there is a lot more to it, especially since the narrator, this character called David, who is a fighter pilot, we get to see his shortcomings, while at the same time him kind of coming to terms with the situation that he is in, thrown all that more out of whack when he has to actually raise a Drac child and keep a promise to his friend. I'm going to leave it at that for now, because the crux of the episode is going to be an in-depth look at the story, and if you don't want it spoiled, then I highly recommend you go out and you find a copy, or you get an audiobook and you read it. There is a collection called The Enemy Papers, which I've actually hunted down. I am fascinated with this world that Barry B. Longyear has created in such a small amount of time. So I've actually tracked this book down and am planning to get a copy of it to read and review on the channel. I was so moved, surprised, at how good this novella is, not only for the story that it tells, because it is a fascinating story and it is incredibly well written, but also for how we can apply what Barry B. Longyear kind of points out in this book to today, which is at the crux of every great science fiction novel, story, film, whatever. So, Enemy Mine, highly recommend it. But if you want to know exactly what happens in the story, then stick around for the next episode of
Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. people.
Okay. So the background of the world in which this is set is that humans are colonizing the various areas in outer space, but at the same time, an alien race known as the Drax that come from the planet Draco, they are also colonizing, and when they get to this certain point, the two species meet, and of course, in typical human fashion, it starts a war. So the two characters are Davidge, William Davidge, I believe his name is, but everyone just refers to him by his last name, is a fighter pilot, and Jariba Shigun, who is a Drac, is also a fighter pilot for the Drac species, and as they're dogfighting, the two of them kind of take each other out and crash land on this planet called Firene 4. It's a very inhospitable planet with storms and all of that kind of a thing. And at the very beginning of the book, they kind of realize that they have to work together or they're both going to die. Davidge has been trained to hate the Drac species. The Drac kind of not so much. It's a more philosophical kind of thing. But they realize they've got to work together, which they do. They get Jariba, we'll just call him Jerry because that's how Davidge refers to him. They get Jerry's pod, his escape capsule, up onto a hill so it doesn't get washed away by the boiling oceans. Pardon me. And they realize that this isn't ideal and they have to kind of do something in order to survive. They ultimately lose the pod but find a cave which they then set up as a makeshift kind of home. And while they are kind of doing this, they learn each other's language. So that now that they can communicate with each other, Davidge starts to learn more about the Drac culture, and Jerry starts to share with Davidge about his religion and philosophy and all of that kind of a thing. We find out that this species, the Dracs, are hermaphroditic, meaning that they actually give birth to their own children. So we find out Jerry is actually pregnant with his child, or its child, I should say. And this child is going to be called Zamis. Now, the reason it will be called Zamis is because in the Drac culture, every family line only has 5 names. And once one of them gives birth to the next one, then it just takes the next name, and then it's kind of a rotation system. But their culture relies heavily on knowing the lineage. So Jerry teaches Davidge his lineage so that Davidge, he considers it an honor. But there's a complication, and Jerry ultimately dies giving birth to Zamis. He asks Davidge, can you take Zamis back to my home planet in order to allow him to recite the lineage in front of this shrine, thus cementing himself in this place of honor in the Drac culture. Davidge, at this point, losing his best friend, starts to go a little bit crazy, not knowing how to deal with this baby Drac. He has no idea what to feed it, no idea what to do, but ultimately he comes to understand what exactly is happening with the child, and the child grows up very, very quickly. Davidge teaches Zamis all about his culture, his lineage, and all of that kind of stuff. Zamis, very inquisitive, very smart child, doesn't really understand the differences between humans and Dracs, especially Dracs only have 3 fingers and humans have 5. And Davish does his best to teach this child, while at the same time trying to survive these harsh winters that this planet has, which are just incredibly brutal. And they start to kind of fix up the cave a little bit with water supplies and stuff. Now, Jerry and Davish worked out how to survive here. They've created their own clothes from snake skins. They know how to capture the local fauna in order to survive and eat and things like that. So Davish finally, at this point, takes Zamis out to see the grave of Zamis's parent. Zamis doesn't tell Davish that he saw something in the sky as he was coming back to the cave. Davish actually sees something, thinks it's a ship, realizes that we have to wait out the winter, and then when that ends and we get the spring, we'll go off looking for the ship. So they do that. They make boots and clothes and supplies and a tent and all that kind of thing. And then when the winter ends, they set out looking for what they believe is a ship to take them off planet. While this happens, Davish, as they're walking across this field, falls in a hole and breaks his leg. Zamis gets him out, but he tells Zamis, you have to go on. There is a ship. It's just over there. You go on and you send me back help. Help arrives in the form of a survey team who let him know that the war is actually over between the Dracs and the humans, and that they're working together to survey this planet. He asks about Zamis. They have no idea what he's talking about. And he is ultimately brought to a ship. His leg is healed and he is returned to Earth. On Earth, he tries to kind of reconnect with people, but can't. He spent so much time with the Dracs that people kind of view him as a Drac lover. And as he's visiting his parents, he decides, he looks up in the sky and sees where the sun that the Drac planet revolves around is. And he's like, you know what? I've got to go find Zamis. I've got to find out what happened to him. So he hops on a starship and heads off to the Drax planet. When he finally gets there, after a whole lot of like red tape and immigration bullshit, he goes to see Jerry's father, a Drac known as Gothig. And he goes into Gothig's estate and meets with Gothig and with Jerry's siblings. And Gothig is like, my son was killed. Don't bullshit me. And Davish is like, your son wasn't killed. I can prove it. And he starts reciting the lineage of the Shingen family, at which point Gothig realizes my son wasn't killed and my son had a child, which means the Shingen lineage would continue. But no one has heard of this kid. No one has heard of Zamis at all. Gothig swears to Davish, we are going to find out what happened to Zamis. And they actually find out that Zamis was recovered by the Drac survey team. But because of his kind of upbringing with Davish, who he calls his uncle, they have put him in basically the Drac version of a mental institution. And they're drugging him up in order to re-educate him so that he can be put back with the Shingen line, because the Shingen line is apparently like up here when it comes to Dracs. They're like the highest of the high, almost royalty. They find Zamis. Zamis is drugged up, doesn't remember anything, and then Davish does this thing where he points out that Zamis only has 3 fingers, but he has 5, which was something that Zamis kind of brought up at when he was born. He couldn't understand the difference between humans and Dracs, and Zamis suddenly remembers. And they get him out of the institution. Davish and Zamis are reunited. And then we jump to kind of the future where they are back on Firene 4. Gothig has kind of relocated his whole family to this planet, built a colony here, and Zamus's child, this Drac called Tai, is bringing his own child to Davij, and we find out that because Davij has learnt so much about Drac culture, but is also human, the Shingen family now take their children to this cave that he and Jerry initially kind of like inhabited while they were trying to survive, where Davij lives now. And Davij kind of raises the child, and then the child goes back to the colony. So it becomes this kind of cycle where Davij has gotten over his prejudice, and at the same time, so has this family of Dracs that now kind of look at it as prestigious or powerful or, you know, whatever, to have this human teaching the children not only human culture but also Drac culture as well, because at one point Jerry gives Davij this little cube that contains a tiny book, and the book is basically the Drac Bible. So Davij learns not only how to read Drac, but learns a lot from the philosophies of this alien race, kind of in parts. And that is basically Enemy Mine. Fucking phenomenal. A spectacular science fiction book, a spectacular book. It's got kind of everything that you want. And I love the fact that it doesn't focus on the war, but it focuses on the human aspect of it. Even from the point of view of the Dracs, because they are a very humanistic and philosophical race of aliens. Really enjoyed it, really loved it. Look forward to delving more into the mythology that Barry Longyear has created with the Enemy Papers. But there you have it. So, with that said, Plaguelands Media have a new Kickstarter coming out, Corporis Monstrorum. I will put the link in the description below, but go check it out. Support us. It's a fantastic project. Art by Ian Van Gammett, kind of an homage to Bernie Wrightson. The text written by the phenomenal author, Dr. Ian Van Gammett. I'm sorry, Dr. Luke Carman. Ian Van Gammett's not, well, Ian is a doctor of fucking awesome. Dr. Luke Carman does the text for this. Yeah, it's on Kickstarter now. You've still got plenty of time to back it. Share it with your friends. Let everyone know about it. We would really appreciate it. But until then, everybody stay safe. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Go make friends with an alien race from another planet. But most importantly, read a fucking book, people.